You're listening to Cinema Rex. It's an Iranian film podcast, episode 29. Ana Lily Amirpour's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Spooky.
Ooh.
Spooky Halloween, Farsi Halloween, part 2 Halloween. It's the spooky Halloween, Farsi Halloween. The ghouls and goblins run the government. Monsters are creepy and they run everyone's lives. Spooky Halloween, Farsi. Okay, what?
Yesterday I was thinking about it. I was like, why didn't we do Halloween episodes last year? And then I realized, because we had literally just started the podcast, and it would kind of be weird to start the podcast on just a bunch of Halloween episodes.
Yeah, and there's only 4 Iranian horror movies I know of that exist in the pantheon of Iranians. 5, actually. I can think of one.
There's probably more. We just don't know about them. I'm sure we'll dig up more and more as we go along.
Can you name one more, or will we have to just save that till next year?
Not off the top of my head.
There's Arslan Arslani's Zalava.
That's the other one.
There's The Night, directed by Kurosh Ahari. Anyways, and Fish and Cat, Shahram Mukri. Farhan, it's such a happy Halloween episode special extravaganza. Durud bar shoma dustan aziz. This is a Cinerex podcast where we talk all things Iranian films, movies, drama plays, screenwriting, scripts, horror, Halloween pumpkins, right? Anything else? Am I forgetting?
Costumes, vampires, werewolves, kids who climb on rocks.
Right. And what's great about this is part 2 of our Halloween specials. 2 weeks ago we did...
You know what you forgot to say, Kaveh?
I'm Kaveh Mohebi.
And I'm Farhan Moradi.
Last week we did Under the Shadow, and today we're going to do a very special Iranian film. But first, let's talk about we have a guest at our door showing up, waking up bright and early.
We have our guest. Oh my God.
Seena Haddad is here with us. He is a writer, director from Portland, Oregon, currently based in LA. After graduating from the American University of Paris, he developed several short films and music videos back in Portland before moving down to LA to pursue storytelling professionally. He's worked as a writer's assistant in Hollywood under the guidance of industry heavyweights Lee Daniels, as you know from Empire, The Butler, Liz Merriweather, did I say that right?
Yep.
From New Girl or The Dropout, Liz Hannah, The Post, The Girl from Plainville, and is currently working on Dan Fogelman's next series for Hulu called Paradise. Welcome to the Cinerex podcast. Seena, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me.
Is it very early? Are you very tired?
It's, compared to when other people have to get up, it's not. It's 7:30 a.m. here, but as a childless adult, this is way before I get up. So I love you guys.
We love you too. A lot of people, when they do the early morning podcast, they just roll out of bed and open up their laptop. But you went into the office.
Yeah, I didn't want to wake up my fiance. And also, I kind of just rolled out of bed and rolled to the office. So,
and you're currently recording this from your writer's room for the Hulu series.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to say this? Is Hulu going to be like, this is a misuse of the facilities?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe. They're probably avid listeners of the podcast, so...
Huge fans.
Yeah.
They're adapting our series into a television series.
Yeah.
Before we get started, I got a few questions for you, just to get to know you a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Is the American University of Paris located in America or in Paris?
It's in Paris. I have the douchiest bio. I tried to...
Paris.
They're put in your accomplishments and what you've done.
No, it's Paris, France, or Paris, Texas?
Paris, France.
Okay, so what is that? I've never even heard of the American University of Paris.
It's just a small liberal arts school in Paris, and it's the best.
Is it in French or in English?
It's all in English.
Did you learn any French while you were there?
I did. I took French in high school, and when I got to Paris, I quickly realized that I had forgotten everything. So I kind of started from scratch, and it was required when I was there. I don't think it is anymore.
This is really cool. So how did you land on that school specifically?
I had gone to New York City right after high school, and I wanted to get into NYU, and they had a partnership.
Cool.
Just went there, tried to do a year there, and ended up staying.
That's very cool. The other thing I wanted to highlight is you, my friend, are the purveyor of the most fortuitous haircut I've ever heard of anyone in this industry having. Because tell me if this is not true. When we were hanging out in LA, as all writers do,
Yeah.
Didn't you tell me that you broke into the industry as a writer, essentially working on shows by getting a haircut at the right time and right place?
Yeah. I ended up sitting.
Are you allowed to talk about that story?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's heard it a billion times, but I feel bad for anyone that knows me that's going to hear this. But,
well, enlighten the audience, because we might have listeners who want to break into the industry and they want to know exactly where to go to get their haircut.
I went to Legends the Barbershop on Fairfax.
And what happened?
It was before it was like 6 months into LA, and I was just finished editing my web series, and I decided to go get a haircut, and I almost canceled it, but I'm glad I didn't, because I went in, the guy before me was late, so my haircut got pushed, and the guy after me was this really serious gentleman that looked like he didn't have time to sit around. So he ended up sitting with the barber next to me. And my barber leaned into my ear and he was like, damn, I just missed out on $40 of tip. And I was like, yo, man, if you want to have him come sit, that's fine. Like, I'll sit off to the side with my hair jacked if you want that. That's no big deal. He's like, no, that's no worries. But that's Lee Daniels. You should try to talk to him. And as soon as the haircut was done, his finish as well, and we walked out at the same time, and I was like, I'll literally do anything for a foot in the door. Like, do you have any opportunities for someone like me? And he was nice enough to take my number down in his notes app, which I thought he was just being nice. But 30 minutes later, his producing partner called me, and the rest is history.
So now your bartender was worried about not getting a good enough tip, and he ended up directing you towards a career in the industry in LA. So what was your tip exactly? How much do you tip for that?
I always tip him huge because of that.
Okay, good. Yeah, after that. Yeah, exactly. All right, cool.
So also, just for people who don't know, Lee Daniels produced The Paperboy, Star, and Empire.
Yeah. I worked on Star.
Cool. And now you are one. Why don't you talk about a little bit about what movie we're doing today? And you don't have to go into why you're excited about it, but just why don't you introduce the film?
We watched A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night by Ana Lily Amirpour. And it was, I'd seen stuff about it when it first came out. And now after watching it, I'm really mad at myself for not watching it back then, because it was very delightful.
Farhan, do you have the Farsi title offhand?
No. I stupidly didn't even realize that there was a Farsi title.
دختر در شب تنها به خانه میرود.
Yes.
Good job, Colin.
I'm reading the Farsi. I understand Farsi. I can. I'm so good. It's my English accent that screws me. It's a British accent I have when I speak Farsi. All right, let me jump into a plot summary, and then we'll jump into discussions. In the Iranian ghost town of Bad City, a place that reeks of death and loneliness, the townspeople are unaware that they're being stalked by a lonesome vampire. After killing and feasting upon a ruthless drug-dealing pimp, our vampire, a young woman, meets a hard-working young man named Arash, who lives and takes care of his heroin-addicted father, Hossein. The young vampire woman spends her time listening to music alone in her apartment, skateboarding, or bedeviling pedestrians at night until she comes across this lost Arash. He shows vulnerability and compassion, and she takes him to her home, where they listen to music, and she resists his exposed neck. They meet the next night, and she says that he does not know the terrible things she has done, but Arash is unfazed and infatuated. Infuriated by his father, Arash gives his addict father drugs and money and throws him out, telling him to take their pet cat with him. That night, their father is killed by the young vampire, and the next day, Arash discovers his body. Distressed, he runs to the woman's apartment and begs her to run away with him. As she's gathering up her things, the cat appears, and Arash realizes that she has had something to do with his father's death. Arash and the woman drive off together, but he pulls off to the side of the road, angry and unsure about what to do. He eventually gets back in the car, and the two continue their trip onwards to a destination unknown. So I ask you, Seena, purveyor of the greatest haircut known in the industry, writer on many great shows, what did you think of A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night?
Man, it was not what I expected. I think I didn't watch any trailers for it before I watched it. I didn't read anything about it, and I haven't read anything since, because I didn't want to influence what I was going to talk about here. But it really blew me away. It kind of, I don't know, all the Iranian movies I grew up watching were, the you guys talk about them all the time on your podcast. It's a different thing entirely, it feels like. And then this one, maybe because I grew up here in the States, it connected with me a little bit more than the other ones have.
The ones that you watched, were they like the old film Farsi stuff like Samad and like Sultan Ghalba, or are you talking about like Kiarostami and Panahi?
Even Kiarostami and Panahi and those guys, they have their thing.
Yeah.
But this just felt like you could.
But growing up, what was your like? What kinds of Iranian movies were you mostly watching growing up?
Those Samad movies, and like my dad loved Daiju Napoleon and like all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot for. Okay, so let me just make this clear. Both of you had watched this for your first time this week, yes?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is my third time watching it, and the first two times I'd seen it was back in 2015 and 2016 ish. So it'd been quite a long time, almost like 9 years since I'd last seen it. I'm curious for both of you. So you'd both obviously heard of this film because it's been quite a prolific film in the Iranian pantheon.
Oh, yeah,
what was the reason? Like, you'd heard about it, but was there like you just hadn't found like an incentive to go see it? Were you intrigued by it? Were you actively avoiding it? Like, what were your thoughts around that before?
I don't like scary movies.
Okay.
And I think from what I saw, it was going to be like this. The trailer made it seem scarier than what it turned out to be.
Right.
Yeah. I typically don't like horror films just in general. But this was actually a movie that I was super interested to see. And I had been wanting to see it for a long time, especially hearing it described as like an Iranian vampire Western. I thought that that marriage of genres was so interesting. Yeah, I just didn't see it purely because I didn't get around to it.
Well,
I wasn't avoiding it.
What did you think of it, Farn?
I really liked it. I think as soon as the movie starts, you get a sense of the tone and feel that the movie's going for. It's very unique, but it's also very familiar in a lot of ways. Like it definitely takes some of the best parts of like The Last Picture Show, El Mariachi, even Downpour, with like maybe a pinch of Twilight, and it marries it all together in a way that I found really worked. The music in the movie was really great. The cinematography was great. Just overall, this world that she built is a world that I really enjoyed spending time in. And it's a world that I am interested to see and learn more about.
Yeah, my thoughts are the same. I was pretty fair weather on the film the first few times I saw it, because I'd expected it to be a lot more horrific, and I'm a huge horror fan.
The opposite of my reaction.
But I was like, it didn't really do it for me as a horror.
Or like you wanted it to be scary.
Scary or gory or like subversive in a way for horror. Just something that... But at that time, too, I didn't have an appreciation for Iranian films as I do now. In part due to this podcast, but also I have a deeper connection with my culture. So this is my first time watching that film with that lens, and I really liked it. I found a new appreciation for what she's doing, how she's subverting expectations, not as a horror film, but as an Iranian film. I said that it gave me Jim Jarmusch vibes.
Yeah.
And the song selection is so cool and different. And you could just tell that she cares so deeply about the songs. So like the soundtrack, I would like went and looked it up later because I was like,
I did too.
Yeah, me too.
Every song on this is a hit.
It's so good.
The opening song is by a band called Kiosk, but I like their music a lot. The band I'm a huge fan of. I love how like the song, when you first hear it, like it winds down and it sort of like fades into this like distorted mess before you get into the world. But what you were saying, Farn, about this idea of like, it doesn't really try to be in reality. This film was shot in California, in a town called Taft, California. So it's not really trying to look like Iran. This fictional city is a fictional city. The town of the setting is called Bad City, Iran.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just that thing I like about like with cinema. Things don't always have to be such an articulation of life. Like she's bending the rules. It's a vampire movie, so like why not have fun with the time and place it could be? This could have been anywhere in the world. It's a fictional city. It's got that Sin City vibe. It's like any era, you know? It could be...
Yeah, it feels timeless.
This could be taking place in the 50s. The cars feel like they're in the 50s. The music selection is like CDs, so it's like the 90s.
And
no
tapes,
one really has a
tapes,
cell phone.
vinyl, CDs.
tape deck in the car. Yeah, vinyl at the lady's house.
But the fashion is sort of all over the place too. Like the little boy that she threatens looks like he's dressed in one of those Kiarostami films, like from the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, he does.
So I really love that stuff. It's really cool. No specific time or place.
Did the movie feel more like a horror to you guys or a Western?
It's more a Western. It didn't feel like a horror movie.
Yeah, it felt to me like a Western with like some horror vibes.
I never felt in danger. I feel like with horror movies, you feel that sense that something's going to happen. And in this one, it was more like subtle and subdued.
But like when the little kid is being threatened by her, there's a sense of danger for her. When the pimp is finally like getting his comeuppance from her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like horror doesn't always have to. You look at those movies that from the Universal monster movies from the 30s and 40s. Those are all considered horror. But like with Frankenstein, you never really felt like you're in trouble. And I think what's beautiful about this film is that every element, I think the music is the most Western to me. Like the music sounds like a spaghetti Western.
Yeah.
The aesthetic looks like an old 1930s Hollywood Universal monster movie. The it's a romance too. It's like a love story.
Yeah.
Which is often like is probably what you're referring to with the Twilight thing, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that makes me think of Jim Jarmusch films is like there's this constant reference to like the trans woman who's like in the streets. Whenever they're like transitioning to a new scene, there's this one beautiful scene with the trans woman like playing with a balloon.
Yeah.
For no real reason. It's just like, here's the passage of time to the next day, and here's a glimpse of the world. And it's just mesmerizing and beautiful. That's that Jim Jarmusch feel.
I totally forgot about that.
There's a lot of moments like that.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's like
little
punctuates
pops.
the world. Yeah.
I didn't realize that woman was trans though.
I'm pretty sure. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
I
you?
think so.
You thought so too. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of cool imagery too. Like I really like when the next morning he's like putting the fork in the yolk. And I was telling Miriam, I was watching with my wife, I'm like, this is such imagery of vampires. Like he's got the fork.
I have that in my notes.
Digging into the yolk and not.
Yeah.
It's great, right?
There's a lot of like piercing imagery, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's after they spend the night together, which is I think also a reference to the night. And
Yeah.
literally the first shot that you see is like the balloon and then a piece of graffiti before you even see who's holding the balloon. There's a piece of graffiti on the wall that literally just says the word sex on it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and then like the pimp's tattoos. Like I remember this from like my cousin telling me this the first time I saw it. But that pimp's tattoo on the side of his head, I think it says Jawkish.
I think it does. Yeah.
Which means pimp. It says something to that effect. And he has sex tattooed under his neck.
Yeah, I
just
saw
the word
that.
sex in English.
Yeah,
and like
saw
all
that.
these.
It's like over the Ahura Mazda, like the sexes.
Yeah. He's got the fat
Yeah.
of a hat, and then he's got that over top.
Sex,
and then
yeah.
the way that his apartment is decorated, he's got like deer heads mounted on the wall, and then a giant marijuana canvas on the back wall.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dominic Raines. He's a good dude.
Is that the production designer?
No, that's the pimp, Saeed.
Oh, the actor.
Yeah. Production designer, though. Shout out.
Do you know him personally?
I've met him. I met him like 10 years ago. He was in a movie called The Taco Course with another Iranian actor I know, Bobby Naderi, who's in Under the Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just met him through Bobby.
That's cool. He that character was influenced by, there's a hip hop group called Diane Wood.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Diane Wood? And there's like a character named Ninja. There's a guy named Ninja who looks just like that. So she had said in interviews that she had modeled his entire aesthetic off Ninja.
That's so funny.
Did you guys see what the name of the DJ is?
No?
Yeah, DJ Porno.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. She's like a pretty punk rock filmmaker in terms of her aesthetics and taste. You can just tell that it's just like she wants to invoke a reaction from her audience, but not out of just like childishness. It's almost like I want to crank it up to level 10 out of 10 if I can.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts or if you want to save it for deeper analysis, but I could go to quite a bit of behind the scenes and trivia. And you guys can jump in with any of these thoughts if you want.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. Ana Lily Amirpour was born in England to Iranian parents, but moved to Miami and then California. Her love for film came when she moved to the U.S. and her family in the 60s and 80s. She speaks about the culture shock she experienced and her connection with American films. Quote, "I got hooked on them. It's how I assimilated and became American through American pop culture and music, Madonna, Michael Jackson, and movies. I was always putting on shows and stuff. My dad got a camcorder when I was 12 and I started making films and imitating commercials. I wasn't like, I'm going to be a filmmaker. My parents never encouraged that. I don't know how they would have. Iranians don't do that. End quote. She made her first horror film at 12 years old, and she's made a litany of shorts. She has a whole suite of shorts. And she made, one of them is called Kitab, which is a story about a young boy in Tehran who buys a Quran and inside finds a porno mag. So like that's the aesthetic she's been working on at a young age. Another one called Pashmalu, which is kind of just this hangout story of two women kind of talking and discussing different things, and they start debating as whether or not girls should be hairy. And that actually starred Sheila Vand, who is the vampire in this. And then she made A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, the short film, which she developed into this film. Ana Lily Amirpour is doing all the skateboarding scenes you see.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
She's an avid skateboarder herself. So because she sort of resembles Sheila Vand in terms of like look, anytime you see Sheila Vand on a skateboard, that's the director.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mentioned that it was shot in Taft, California, despite being set in the Middle East. She wrote the script originally in English, and then she wrote it phonetically in Farsi. So Salam would be Salam.
That's what I did.
The entire. Oh, did you do that for Tehran?
Yeah. A lot of people I know, that's how they did it. Like a lot of diasporic filmmakers.
Interesting.
They write it in English and then they write it phonetically in Farsi.
Interesting. So she one time, as like for fun or something, when her grandmother was visiting, she put on her grandmother's chador and she started skateboarding with it on. And the way the wind blew it up made her feel like, first she was like, oh, I look like a stingray. And then she's like, I kind of look like a bat or a vampire. And that was what gave her the first influence to write the script.
That's
the
so
script
cool.
has been with her in her head a long time. So that image of her on the skateboard, you know, and like you see the cape flowing like a vampire, is like that's from a real life moment she had.
That's so cool.
This I couldn't find too much more detail on, but Elijah Wood came on as the executive producer of this film.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell if that was like once it was like in the festival circuit or early on.
I don't know, but I remember him distinctly being involved in a lot of the marketing around the film. Like to the point where I thought he would actually be in the movie. Like I was expecting him to like cameo somewhere, but he didn't. And I was like, oh, I wonder like what the extent of his involvement was.
You know, also she has another cameo. Ana Lily Amirpour plays the woman in skeleton makeup when they're talking about the ecstasy scene. That's her. There's a graphic novel adaptation of this book, which is 2 volumes. The first volume is this story. It's actually, I bought it on Amazon right when I saw it.
Wait, sorry. A graphic novel adaptation of this book? Or the movie?
She's made this, a graphic novel adaptation of this movie exists.
Right.
So
Okay.
She
I thought for a second
film.
you were saying that there was a book.
No, my apologies.
No, all good.
Volume 1 is this book, and Volume 2 is a prequel to the story. So there's a backstory to what happened to this woman.
Whoa.
So basically, right before this vampire arrived at Bad City, she spent a decade in the desert. And before the desert, it was the 1970s revolution, which I guess officially puts this in a timeline at some place. But she was so depressed about the revolution happening that she got sucked into a blood rage and started killing everyone without rhyme or reason, essentially having kind of a massive bender and just drinking all the people she can until she couldn't take it anymore and wanted to die. So she went out to the desert to let the sun take her. But every night she would bury herself in the sand again because she kept balancing this line of like, I want to die, I don't want to die.
Right.
I want to die. So she walked the desert for 10 years before she arrived in Bad City. And that's the prequel to this vampire woman.
That's cool.
That's crazy.
I would love to see like a mini series prequel.
Yeah, I think she should. She should try to get that made.
Seena, get on it.
Yeah, Seena, that's on you, man. You're our LA Connect.
I'm
surprised you haven't run into her anywhere in the city, being an Iranian filmmaker artist.
I didn't really hang out with Iranians for a long time.
Yeah, I feel that.
It was
I was the same.
It was actually it's funny, when I first moved here, I was like, I'm just going to focus on what I need to focus on. I'm not trying to get any support from the Iranian community. And I definitely will never ever go on Shahs of Sunset or have anything to do with anyone on Shahs of Sunset. And then immediately I worked on a show, Star, and our editor was married to Reza from Shahs of Sunset.
That's funny.
Did it to myself.
That's funny.
Okay, so here's the next question I have for you. Did you know this was an Indiegogo campaign and how most of its funding was done through that? So in July 2012, they did an Indiegogo to fund the feature-length version of the film. In August of 2012, their campaign goal of $55,000 was surpassed. The project ended up with a total sum of $56,900, raised by 290 backers.
Wait, I think I saw the Indiegogo campaign like a long time ago. I think that's how I first found out about the movie.
But this film could not have been made for just that much, right? That's insane. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night was shot over the course of 24 days in Taft, California. And of course, because she didn't shoot in Iran, this allowed her to not be constrained by the restrictions of filming in Iran, which include filming permits and facing censorship, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have a director question for you, Farhan.
Hit me.
Translate this for the people. The film was shot digitally with anamorphic lenses, which Ana Amirpour and Lyle Vincent, the cinematographers, selected in an effort to emphasize the bleak, otherworldly atmosphere of the film. So, like, I obviously know what this means because I definitely know my lenses and I'm definitely on top of this. But just for, like, Seena and, like, the rest of the audience who clearly doesn't know what anamorphic lens means, just try to give, like, a crash course on that.
Help us out.
Because I know. I should mention again.
Right.
I know.
Yes, of course. So, typical lens is spherical. So, it's like a sphere. It's, like, round. It's a circle. And when you're shooting footage, the footage ends up looking the way that it looks when you shot it. Like it's not skewed. The proportions are all correct. But if you want to shoot footage that's way wider, so think of like those old Hollywood classics that are widescreen. So not just like the proportions of your TV, but you know how you get the black bar at the top and bottom for some movies that you watch? It's not because you have footage missing at the top and bottom. It's actually because you have extra footage at the left and right of the screen. And in order to make it fit your TV, they have to shrink it down. But if you're watching it in a movie theater, what ends up happening is you end up getting way more footage all the way across. And Westerns especially utilize this because it helps to convey a vast landscape when you have that. So the way an anamorphic lens works is when you look at it, it actually looks more like an oval, like it's bent. It smushes the image so that when you're filming it, it smushes the image from left and right into the frame. But then either in post or when you're projecting it for exhibition, you stretch it back out and now you actually get way more footage on the left and right. A lot of times when you watch these indie films, they just add crop bars at the bottom and top, which I thought that's what the movie was doing at first. But then I started to notice the really long light streaks, the bokeh, the way that the focus was being shifted from one character to the other. It was all indicative of the fact that, like, oh, this is actually anamorphic. I was surprised because it was shot digitally at a time when it was probably easier to shoot film if you wanted. You know what I mean? But given the budget restraints, I can understand why they went digital. But then given the budget restraints, I was confused why they went anamorphic. Hearing that is an interesting explanation.
Well, that's as clear as mud. Thank you, Farhan. I now understand what an anamorphic lens is.
Look,
and I'll never have to question it again.
The summary is it's a type of lens that squeezes the image. It smushes the image. So and then you unsmush it and it makes the image way wider.
That's exactly the like. If you're out there, you want to be a director, smush it up.
Yeah, if you want to be a director, rewind 20 minutes to listen to Farhan's explanation of anamorphic lenses.
Okay, last two things I'll have. Amirpour had said that she and her actors watched Nosferatu, the German expressionist film that Farhan has seen, and many spaghetti westerns in preparation for the roles. She also said that every piece, this is a direct quote, every piece of the story, every character, every costume, every bit of music is something that she, quote, loves to the point of obsession.
That's awesome.
Everything in this film is her favorite thing. The costumes, the characters.
That definitely came through.
Music, which is cool. Yeah, like the way, like you said, the production design, the way the room is decorated. All those Madonna posters, like they couldn't legally get Madonna's face, but she somehow got Margaret Atwood approval. So like they put Margaret Atwood's face over Madonna's face. The Michael Jackson bad poster in the background. You can't see because it's in the shadow, but it's
I saw that.
Ana Lily Amirpour's face over the Michael Jackson poster.
I thought those posters looked weird.
Yeah.
The Prince face also.
Yeah. There's a Beatles one that she said is Elijah Wood and his producing partners over the Beatles faces.
Okay, so he was involved pretty early on then.
Yeah, you're right. That tracks. This is the last one. In an interview with Movie Maker, Amirpour spoke regarding her relationship with filmmaking. People ask me, why did you make A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night? My answer is that I was lonely. That's why. But taking that a step further, the truth is that I make films to make friends and find real intimacy. A connection with others based on something that's meaningful to me. The people who make these films with you, your cast and crew, it's like they're on a vision quest with you. That is an incomparable experience. And then when the film is done and out there, the people who are attracted to your film, the audience, festivals that embrace it, other filmmakers, artists, the critics who like what you do, They are my friends, and I don't expect to be friends with everyone. End quote.
So it's interesting that you drew the parallel between this film and Jim Jarmusch's work, because in an interview between her and producer-director Roger Corman in the DVD extras, she claims that she's not much of a fan of Jarmusch, but as virtually everyone who studies film has pointed out to her, the stylistic similarity, she's taken it as a compliment.
That's interesting. I watched that interview with Corman, but it was one of like 9 interviews I watched, so I guess I got lost in the fade.
Yeah.
Jim Jarmusch is a hit and miss director. Like, I really love half his films, and I find a third of his films unwatchable.
That's like a massive sway from like one side to the other.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. Quick critical reactions. This had 96% certified Rotten Tomato score and 75% audience score. And like across Oscar, I didn't want to go over it piece by piece, but it has 9 wins and 23 nominations for over a dozen international film festivals worldwide.
Wild.
And it debuted at Sundance Film Festival, where it was nominated for the best of Next, which is the Next program is kind of like the directors to look out for and stuff. But yeah, debuted at Sundance in 2014. All right, Seena, here's where I want you to shine. Let's talk about deeper analysis, where we talk about the larger themes. What is this film about? What do you extrapolate? Moments, scenes, lines of dialogue. No, we won't do lines of dialogue yet. Character, go.
I thought the film, to me, after watching it and letting it sink in yesterday, identity kept popping up. Who do you identify as? Who are you in society? We have these 2 characters that are presented as our main characters, and I think through the lens we're supposed to like them, but they're doing some pretty horrific stuff. Like, Arash starts off pretty innocent, but then he steals a bunch of drugs, becomes a drug dealer. He kind of goes off the deep end on that side. And the girl we're rooting for her, but she's also a murderer. She's going after bad people, but she also goes after that homeless guy. And I don't think we saw him anywhere else in the movie, so it was just kind of like a random attack. So I think it really, like, morality is also like a theme or something. Like, what is moral? Who are we rooting for as an audience? I found myself rooting for Arash and the girl, but also realizing that they're doing some stuff that's not above board.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which is why it's very interesting that it's like, that's the spaghetti Western model too. It's like the man with no name. He's like the hero of the story, but you know, these spaghetti Westerns have characters that are doing scrupulous things in the name of what they believe is right or wrong. So, you know, they are the anti-hero vigilante. You know, arguably Batman falls in that mold too. So yeah, that's cool. I get that. Farhan?
I mean, in Arash's first appearance, or not his first appearance, but like a couple scenes in, we see him steal the earrings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's before he meets the girl or sees the dead body, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of this film, and I don't know, I could be reaching, but I feel like a lot of this film is commentary on Iran and the corrupting effects of the environment on society. Especially when you see how, like, that scene with the drug dealer and Arash's dad, and he's like, "Is my dad an addict, or did you make him an addict?" And that whole exchange that they have, I think, is really interesting because it to me, it kind of acts as a little bit of a stand-in of like, this is what the environment of Iran, with the government and with the poverty and with all the mistrust between people, how it has basically broken its population, right? The addiction rate in Iran shot up way after the revolution considerably, and every year it gets worse. Also, I think the vampire going around and stalking all these men is meant to feel a little cathartic. It's almost meant to be like revenge against all these toxic men and against the patriarchy for what it does to society, for what it does to women, for what it does to other young men. Especially in that scene where she approaches the young boy and she's like, "I'll be watching you." which I thought was really interesting because she's like threatening this kid of like, hey, you're innocent right now, but you have it within you to become like all these other terrible people. Don't let it happen.
Yeah, I extrapolated the same meaning from that.
And the last thing I would say is this is kind of tying back to what Seena said with the gray areas of the good and the bad. She goes around killing people that she perceives to be bad, right? But then when something good is finally coming her way, she doesn't allow herself to have it. And she resists Arash. And she's like, I'm bad. I've done bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's almost indicative of how because she believes that bad people deserve death, and now she's saying that she's bad. I think in a lot of ways, she's saying that she deserves to die and she doesn't deserve to live and to be rewarded.
Something else that I noticed is that she's like The Walking Dead, essentially, as a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she might have saved Arash's life because she kills the drug dealer. And I feel like if Arash went to Saeed's apartment, something bad would have happened to him.
Yeah.
I feel like he was going I think he was going in there hot. He was about to do something that might have gotten him killed with this dangerous person that we've met.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like, because of her, he's kind of like The Walking Dead too. He kind of like missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He never finds out, right?
I don't think he finds out that she killed him.
No,
Right.
she doesn't.
So that sets him on that course.
Right, yeah. He might be able to put it together in hindsight because he finds his dad's body in a similar state to the other guy. And he pieces together that she killed the dad, so.
Also, when she kills Saeed,
But sorry, continue.
the biting off the finger and doing the same thing he was doing to the women was badass.
Yeah, it's very cathartic.
One of my main takeaways, it's like analyzing this from like the feminist leanings, is the subverting the expectations of what a woman alone at night in Iran means. Even there in the title, a girl walks home alone at night, that has implications of like this woman is in danger.
Yeah.
It's not safe for her to do.
Yeah.
I think that could be anywhere. I don't think it's
Anywhere, for sure, absolutely.
limited
But
to
I mean,
Iran.
in the context of this is an Iranian film and this is set in Iran, quote unquote, yes.
Yeah.
But it's subverting that expectation because this woman who's walking home alone at night, she's the perpetrator, not the victim. So she possesses this agency and power that isn't typically reserved for women in her environment, whether it's Iran or anywhere in the world. And so that has it's like you're doing the judo flip on the idea of what that means and the fact that, you know, the stuff we talk about, the mythology of a vampire, it's like sexy, it's romantic, it's dangerous, it's an anti-hero, it's a serial killer, it's a drug addict. Like vampirism is also like metaphor for drug addiction often. All of these things tied together in this one character, in this woman. It's like it's a very fascinating character, multifaceted, very layered character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my main takeaways is like this anti-hero that from the title alone, without any context, you're given to assume is a victim.
Mm-hmm.
But in every scene, she's never in danger. It's anyone around her that's in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool. Again, could be anywhere in the world, but what does that mean in the context of Iranian women today? That's my main deeper analysis.
Yeah.
The silence can only mean that I've rocked your world with fucking insight.
I was going to say I love that, but then I saw Seena nod his head and I was like, Seena, please you first.
No, I agree with you. I mean, any society, and Iran being one of the worst examples of this, where patriarchy is asserting force or control over women, it's very cathartic to see a woman take that agency back, even if as a vampire.
Well, and just the chador just becomes in this film like another layer of like the fearful vampire. It's not used here as like making her submissive. She's wearing a chador, but it's like she's actually more frightening in that chador because it's like a cape. It's like a Dracula's kind of gown. The way she floats on that skateboard. At times, my wife pointed out when she's at one point next to the wall, because she's on a skateboard, it actually looks like she's hovering and floating.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So it's adding all of this, like the chador is masking what is being used, rather in Iran as like a way of keeping women submissive or trying to force them to be in a corner that, thankfully, the women are refusing to be held in. But in this case, it's like everything is adding to the mystique of the vampire.
It's interesting how in the last film that we reviewed and in this one, the chador is used in a way to make something more frightening.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, of course, yeah.
Right? In the last one, it creates these specters, these jinn.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this one, it's the like cape of the vampire.
Yeah.
And going back to the idea of her floating or flying, it felt like she flew to Ati's apartment when she sensed that she was in danger.
Yeah.
Like she burst through the door.
Yeah.
Like she was
comes out of nowhere.
She gets alerted and she's there. Yeah.
Yeah. And how she even got alerted too is strange.
And then how she attacks Arash's father and like takes him to the ground, that also feels like she's like flying and like slamming him into the ground.
And then the chador again, once again, becomes this like veil that's going to be like consuming you. And great. Best scene, where we discuss our favorite scenes in the film. Take it away, Seena.
It's two scenes. It's right after the party, after he takes the ecstasy.
Yep.
And he's out on the street and they run into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that going into her apartment when he spins the disco ball and the music's playing, like that whole sequence.
Mm-hmm.
The outside stuff reminded me of like La Dolce Vita almost. It was like fun and playful, and they're outside and he sits down, he can't get up. She has to push him on the skateboard. I thought that was really a sweet moment.
Yeah.
He's like staring at the light in his Dracula costume. It was just, loved all the imagery there. And then Said's apartment when he's thinking that he's seducing the girl, but really she's seduced him.
Yeah.
And
wants to eat him.
She flips it on him. Yeah.
I'll just jump in because that's my favorite scene was that same scene inside the apartment. The hangout scene, the record is playing. The song is great. The song is called Death by White Lies. And again, my wife pointed this out, was in that scene, he's dressed as the vampire because he's coming from a costume party. And she takes off her chador and her neck is so exposed. Like her like pure, pristine, almost porcelain neck. And the way it's a 4-minute scene of him slowly approaching her from behind. It's like, again, that subversion of who's in this moment wielding the power. And the guy doesn't think he is, but like in any other context, if you walk in that scene, it's like, oh, the male vampire is going to attack this woman whose neck is revealed.
Right. But
we know from the context of the film, it's the reverse.
Yeah.
And she resists biting his neck, even though for a moment she thinks about doing it. And the way...
Yeah, she literally pulls his head back.
Yeah.
And leans into his neck.
Yeah, the way that build up happens is, to me, just... I was like, oh, this is masterclass. Like, this is such a beautiful scene.
Well, she allows him.
Yeah.
She allows him to come up.
Yeah, exactly.
And do that. It's all... She's in the power position there.
Yeah, for sure.
She's allowing herself to be vulnerable, and she's allowing him to get that close. And I think... that might be the first time she's done that.
Yeah.
Is what I guessed.
Yeah. I think I'd heard in a Q&A that they considered her 170 years old or something.
Oh, wow.
So if it hadn't been the first time she'd allowed herself for that, it's definitely been the first time in a very, very long time that she's allowed herself.
Likely since the revolution, based on what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to read the comics.
Yeah, I do too.
I just bought them on Amazon.
I'm about to do that.
Do you have to, is it one of those instances where you have to read the first one first and then the prequel, or can you read the prequel and then read the first one?
I think the order it came out was volume 1 and volume 2, just 2 volumes. The first volume is the adaptation of the movie.
Okay.
Second volume.
So
is
probably read it the way it was released then.
Yeah. What's your best scene, Farhan?
Mine is the scene with the vampire and the child, which we kind of already talked about, but there's a scene where there's this boy, he's a little boy, he's skateboarding home, and then the girl rolls up on him and she is like stalking him. He gets scared and then she pops up in front of him and she's like, are you a good boy or are you a bad boy?
Yeah.
And then he like doesn't respond at first, and then finally he's like, I'm good. And then she's like, are you really good? And then he's like, yeah, I'm good. And then she's like, I'm gonna ask you one more time and you better not lie to me. Are you a good boy or are you a bad boy? And then the boy's like crying and he's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, from now on until the end of your days, I will be watching you.
Yeah.
And then the kid like runs away and then she ends up with the skateboard.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it definitely felt like probably a little bit of a cathartic release, I would imagine, for the scriptwriter, just to be like a warning to the next generation of men. To be like, hey, don't corrupt yourself. Don't become like these other people.
Yeah. I thought of it exact same way. I just want to I'm going to take a different line for damn, that's poetry, but I had that for a while because I thought, she goes, I could take your eyes out of your skull and feed them to the dogs. I'll be watching you for the rest of your life. And it's like this question of, are you a good boy? Isn't just the behavior of a child. It's about what kind of man do you want to be in Iran?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be someone respectable with morals, or are you going to be one of these pieces of shit that fucking run over, like become Besiji and tell women how to live their lives?
It also makes it very clear to the audience at this point that like she has a code. She has a mantra.
Yeah.
She only goes after bad men.
Yes. Yeah.
And so later, I think it makes it more impactful later when the boy is trying to like give her hamburgers and take her out and all this stuff, and then she won't let him, and then she's like, I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
I think it paired with that, I think it really sells the moment later.
Yep. Damn, that's poetry. We'll discuss our favorite lines from the film. Either of you guys can take it away.
So, what do you got?
When the girl's in the room with Ati, and it's not, there's a lot of really good lines in this movie, but the one that stuck out to me is when Ati asks, I think she says, who are you or what are you? I forget the exact line.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially she's making the girl reflect on herself. And right after that is when she goes and bites that homeless guy that I mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think after that, she's questioning her relationship with Arash. So I think that question really stuck out to me because of everything that we've said before about identity and her morality and who she thinks she is.
Right. Who do you think you are, Seena?
Still figuring it out.
Smash cut to Seena eating some homeless guy outside.
Outside the Paramount lot.
That's good. That's really good. My favorite line of dialogue is early on in the film. It's when Arash is getting in an argument with the drug dealing pimp about how he's made his dad a junkie. And the pimp is like, oh, it's not a big deal, whatever. And then he says, your father is just the average man. He's a gambler, a womanizer. He needs his medication to take away the pain. Regular and average.
میدونی بابات مرد معمولیه، قمارباز، زنباز، دوست داره دعواشو بذاره که دردش بره. میبینی؟ معمولی باشه.
And I thought that this is how a lot of people will try to convince vulnerable members of society to corrupt their own lives. To be like, yeah, it's normal to be corrupted. It normalizes it so that terrible people can continue to be terrible and can continue to make more terrible people. It's like a disease. It infects people and then the infection spreads. And I think that it was really excellent commentary on this problem in society.
It seems like he's gaslighting him a little bit too.
Yeah.
It's like, this is who he is, but he's the drug dealer. He's the one causing the pain.
Yeah.
Doesn't he say, the son says to him, like, and who made him that way?
Yeah, he does.
I think he responds with that line.
Yeah.
I think he says it first and then he replies with this.
My favorite line is the line when at the costume party when the two women approach Arash and they first ask him for ecstasy and he gives them X. And then she offers him one and he's like, first resistant. And she goes, here. She goes, this pill is nothing without you. It needs you.
این قرص چیزی نیست اگر تو نباشی. تو رو لازم داره.
And that line to me is, there's so much you can extrapolate from that, because I was like, it's the first time I ever thought, I'm like, I've never thought of it that way. Like, the pill itself is nothing. The pill needs to be ingested by a person for it to have its effect.
Right.
Whether that's the bad behavior of booze, the booze itself isn't going to do anything. It's got to be inside of a person. The loving behavior of ecstasy, the lucid dream-like behavior of LSD, like none of that can be affected outside of its body. And I wondered how that applies to like political spectrums or Iranian behavior, or that thing you just said, Farhan, about people are just normal, and it's like almost like it's putting the onus on the individual to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
These drugs or this personality or this sense of power is nothing outside of the hands of people. It's the people who will make it corrupted or beneficial or helpful to society.
I think I missed something there. Was he was Arash the one who gave them the ecstasy at first?
Mhm.
I think because he got the suitcase from the drug ad. He got all the
Oh,
drugs.
I missed that.
Yeah, he's the drug dealer at the party.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Before we continue, that scene you brought up, we haven't talked about it at all. Him dealing the drugs. It's also a moment where Arash feels like he's a part of that upper echelon of society. Where in the beginning of the film we see he's a handyman.
Oh yeah.
He even feels bold enough to try to kiss the woman,
Mm-hmm.
and she rejects him.
Yeah.
And that's what sets him outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting moment to see him not belong with these people that he's trying really hard to belong with.
No, that's wonderful.
And it's the same woman from the beginning of the movie when she was like,
it's the ear. He stole her earrings.
yeah. But before he stole the earrings, he's like in her room and she's like giving him like flirtatious looks and all this stuff. And he's like, hey, do you mind like leaving the room so that I can do my work? And she's like, what? Why? And he's like, well, I don't know. Your parents are home and they're probably not going to like the fact that like a boy is alone in the room with you.
Can I ask 2 questions? I might have actually forgotten. We should have done this during our reaction. There's a scene when like you know how there's that giant ditch where all the dead bodies are?
I was going to ask about that.
So a guy is dragging the dead body, the pimp's dead body, right? Who's you know, there's a scene that shows someone dragging a dead body. Is it the woman?
I miss that.
It looked like a guy at the beginning of the film too.
Yeah.
We see that ditch.
There's a ditch, but at one point there's a male body dragging one of the bodies, adding to the ditch, and you assume it's the vampire who's the woman who's killing all these people, but it wasn't her dragging the body. And so I was like, does she have a familiar or something? Or was it Arash in that scene who was dragging the pimp's body into the... Anyways, so none of us knew, right?
I don't think it was Arash, but...
I also didn't realize that ditch had bodies in it until you just mentioned. I was like,
Really?
oh, I thought it was a ditch. Like, I thought it was just like filled with trash. Like, and I think the part of that is like, because it's black and white, my brain was just like, oh, it's a bunch of garbage.
Foreign.
But then now that you said that, I like pulled the shot back up and I'm like, how did I not realize that those were bodies?
It's at the
Farhan
beginning of
just
the
realized
film,
that this
right?
woman, he just found out this woman's been killing people throughout the movie. He thought
Well, no,
she
I
was
knew
just
that.
eating
I didn't
trash.
realize that it was an entire ditch filled with people, though. That's wild. I thought that was just like set dressing to be like, oh, like this city, I don't know, it's dilapidated. There's garbage everywhere.
There's this, I don't know if this is a theme or if it's just like a mode of imagery, but there's a lot of like, it's a vampire movie. There's a lot of like piercing imagery.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously blood sucking. He pierces her ears. He pierces the egg yolk with his fork, which is kind of like fangs. There's a lot of shots of the oil drilling,
Yeah.
which is piercing the earth.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a good one.
And they look like fangs.
And they look like fangs. There's stuff like that. And then when he sees her for the first time as a killer, when he sees the cat at her apartment, in his eyes, the way the light is shining in his eyes, it's like 2 fangs. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Oh, cool. I didn't catch that. Seena, here's another piercing imagery. Heroin needle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have that on your list?
I missed it, but that's a great catch.
Heroin needle, drilling. Oh, it's really cool. Yeah, that's a good point. Can we go to favorite performance?
Yeah.
Mine's a tie. Sheila Vand and Arash Morandi. They're both incredible in it. And in 2 totally different ways. I can't pick one from the other. So I'm giving it double awards.
Nice.
Best performance.
I'm going to double down on what you said, but also add Dominic Raines and Mojan.
How many favorite performances do you have, Seena?
I have 4. I just said.
Yeah, there's like 6 people in this movie. So-
Seena's
Yeah, I'll
conscious
just
of the
take-
fact that all these actors live and work in the same city as him.
yeah,
He's trying to not burn any
No, no.
bridges.
Truly, I mean, obviously the 2 were amazing. I think Dominic as Saeed kind of gave you a good bad guy. He's the only real bad guy.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he dies in the first like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. He was my favorite performance too. Dominic Raines.
Yeah.
He just like, it's such a unique, interesting character. And you just love to hate him. Like he's such a douchebag.
Yeah, he did that. The dancing in the room.
Oh
was-
god, the dancing.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dancing. That
The
whole
dancing.
scene is so great.
And then he just like randomly starts like doing curls with the girl in the room.
Yeah, that was my initial favorite scene because as I was watching, I'm like, oh yeah, everything about this is great. It's so like cheesy.
Yeah.
The production design of his place, the whole person, it was really good.
What was your 4th favorite performance, you know.
Mojan Navabi. I've seen her in so many things. I just saw her in Fleischman is in Trouble. She's a great actress.
I saw
and
that.
I thought she did great.
Right, yeah. That's right. I remember her in that. She's good. She's really good, actually. We also can give shout outs to Masuka the cat, who was not originally written into the script. I think it's the producer's cat. And I think they were auditioning other cats or something once they wrote the cat. But then the producer said, come on, Lily, try my cat out. And she's like, all right, fine. And
the cat was so cute.
By her skills. She's so skilled. Yeah, she liked her skills so much she put him in the film.
That's so funny.
Fine,
Marshall Manish too was really good. Would you say, Kaveh?
Who's your favorite performance? Is the
Dominic Raines.
Dominic Raines,
who plays the drug dealing pimp.
Well, we can get into things we didn't like with the Festival of Cons, formerly Nitpicks, Hot Takes, and What Aged Poorly, where we discuss all of those things. We'll pick one or two things.
Oh, your least favorite scene would go into here too, Seena.
Yeah, if you have a least favorite scene or whatever.
Okay.
So, but a small section where you can put in something that you maybe didn't love.
Kaveh, it's not one thing.
One or two things, max.
Don't listen to him, Seena. Talk about as much. It's called a festival of cons, as much as you want.
Well, cons is a plural in the sound of it, but it's French, so it's actually just one. I'll just go quickly with mine. One. It's kind of a nitpick, but I felt a few of the scenes with the father's heroine storyline kind of slowed a lot of the momentum. I think whenever I'm with Sheila Vand or Arash, the momentum is really flowing and I'm really liking it. But there was two particular scenes when he's yelling at the cat thinking it's his dead wife.
Yeah.
And when he's forcing the woman to do drugs with him, they just kind of they take a long time and they slow down the momentum a bit. But then the second one with the heroine, it's followed by the attack scene, which is pretty cool and picks up momentum again. I just thought personally, anytime you were sort of alone with him, and I feel like you can kind of sense that maybe even from the writing standpoint, it was Ana Lily Amirpour's lesser favorite parts to flesh out. I don't know. Sorry.
No, I think my least. I like Marshall Manesh. I've seen him in other things. I really like him, but in this movie, he had a lot of Chak to Saddam energy. Just hitting his head and running around, and it felt very too much. And exactly like you said, it kind of took me out of the film.
Yeah. I actually like the scene of him outside the most when he was walking in the streets in the Caesar. That was cool. I like seeing him more out in the streets than I do pacing and sweaty.
Most of my nitpicks for the movie are actually really, really tiny. Just some technical stuff, I guess, some of the effects when they were trying to make the TV look like an old TV very clearly look like a filter in Premiere that someone just slapped on. And
that's so funny. I don't think anyone else would nitpick these things.
No, I know. That's why they're nitpicks.
That's why I did out 50% of what he says. He often talks about the subtitles, which is not often done by
Here's the thing. Kaveh's gonna sit here and talk about the thematic statement in the writing in the scene, yada yada yada, because his craft, he comes from a writing background. I come from a editing background and a technical background, or a background in directing. So usually the things I'm pointing out are technical issues with blocking or lighting or a weird performance thing or a weird editing decision.
Yeah.
So I care, what Kaveh pointed out didn't bump me at all. I was whatever, you're building the world. But that TV static effect took me out of the movie because it reminded me oh yeah, this is a movie that somebody made and someone slapped a really bad Premiere effect on this. Or when she's attacking Arash's dad, the movie's intercut with it's intercut with black. And I guess it's to try to build, it's intense and it's disorienting, but it just didn't work for me. And the use of Cheshme Man in the scene with the dad and the sex worker didn't work for me either. And that might be because it's one of my favorite songs. And it just didn't fit the story. The lyrics didn't fit. The dancing to the song didn't really work for me. I feel as much as I love the music throughout the rest of the movie, that one song really irked me. That's all I got.
Double feature lineup where if we were going to be festival programmers and we're doing a double feature of films and one of them is this one, Seena, what would you pair this with that would have some sort of thematic or tonal connection?
I just watched it the other day, so it still hasn't fully sunk in. I think if you're doing a double feature, this and Under the Shadow, because as modern Iranian horror films, Holy Spider was also weirdly kind of like a horror film. I feel like
Oh yeah.
that's the opposite of this movie in a lot of
Oh
ways.
yeah.
Very different type of horror, but yeah, that's interesting.
And yeah, I think I'll have to reflect on it more. Those two kind of popped into mind. If you're scheduling like a double feature,
That's a really good one. This and Holy Spider.
Yeah. A movie about a man who preys on women, and then a movie about a woman who preys on men.
yeah. Except he's doing out of malice.
Yeah.
I mean, in both cases, they both are targeting, like, she's targeting bad men and he's targeting who he perceives to be bad women.
Yeah.
Foreign.
Kaveh, you ready for mine?
Yeah, I'm very excited.
I'm curious if you've seen this movie,
Yeah, I have.
The Last Picture Show.
Yeah, of course I've seen the
Yeah.
Bogdanovich film.
All right. I'm sorry. Thought I'd like finally found a movie that Kaveh didn't know.
I'm surprised you've seen it.
What can I say? I'm a man of cinema. Yeah, I think because it's The Last Picture Show also takes place in this kind of dead end, almost like a ghost town in the middle of a desert. There's not much going on. Every character in the movie has, like, there's no good characters in that movie. Everyone has some kind of problem. And everyone's problems are somehow cyclical and they're initiated by other characters around them or other societal pressures around them. I think in a lot of ways, obviously, the stakes in this film are higher. So in some ways, The Last Picture Show feels a little smaller in scope. But The Last Picture Show has way more characters. So there's a lot more plot lines that are kind of interconnected than this. So in that sense, this is smaller. But I think it would be a great double feature lineup to do those two movies back to back. And funny enough, The Last Picture Show it's not Iranian. It's not a Western. It has no vampires. It's not a horror.
It's black and white, though.
It is black and white. It is black and white. But I think just because of the world that it sets up and the complex relationships between the characters, it would be interesting to watch them back to back.
Yep.
My runner-up was El Mariachi, though.
Got it. That's a good one. I have 3 runner-ups. The only non-vampire movie I would pair this up with is Shahram Mokri's Ashkan, The Charmed Ring, and Other Stories, which was the film I actually watched when you were there, but you were editing the podcast at Afro's house.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the thing that's interesting about Shahram Mokri is that he's an Iranian filmmaker who also makes genre films. So his films are always about a bank heist or like a virus that plagues Iran or like a murderer. So it's like he does genre films, and Ashkan and The Charmed Ring is like a Tarantino-esque Pulp Fiction story that's in black and white. So you could pair up genre night, black and white Iranian genre night with this film, and then a bank heist movie, which is his Ashkan story. My other 2 runner-ups are, I would call vampire movies, but different. Like unconventional vampire movie night. So you pair
so
up...
Twilight and this.
God, no, not Twilight. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night and Jim Jarmusch's Only Lovers Left Alive, which I think is an awful movie. It's the one with Tom Hiddleston. Not a great movie, but a vampire movie. Or Humanist Vampire Seeking Consensual Suicidal Person by Ariane Louis Says, which was actually at TIFF last year, and it's a character piece about like essentially what the title is.
Is that the whole title of the film?
Yeah. Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person.
We should all name our projects things like that.
Yeah.
A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have a feature I wrote, a title for a feature I wrote is called You Go Your Way, I'll Go Your Way Too. That's the title for a film I wrote.
It's a great title.
But by number one is Thirst by Park Chan-wook. Now, Park Chan-wook is the director of Old Boy. If you like Old Boy or like those revenge movies, this guy is the thriller horror director for you. He's my favorite South Korean director. He's also done like all of the Vengeance films, like Lady Vengeance or JSA, Joint Security Area.
Not Justice Society of America?
No. He also did Sympathy for Master Vengeance. Thirst is his vampire movie, which is so good because it's about a priest who gets bitten by a vampire, and it's the moral implications of like him having to kill now to survive. And there's a massive twist halfway through the movie, and it almost changes genres halfway through without spoiling too much or anything at all.
The Korean title for the film translates to Bat.
Right. That sounds like a miscommunication.
What?
Because Thirst is a better title for this.
Yeah.
So those are my movies. I would go with Thirst as the best one, foreign language vampire movie.
Solid.
But all of them would make great. Okay, can this be a modern Hollywood remake?
Yeah.
Basically already a modern Hollywood film.
Yeah, it could be. I could see them taking this idea, but they'd fudge it up.
Here's my pitch. I would say have her direct it. Pay her again to direct it again. Like, you know how Speak No Evil was just made a few years ago in Danish? It's a Danish-Dutch film, but they've just done like 2 years later an American remake.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Do this with the same director and same cast, but in English and maybe in color just to change it up. And give everyone in the crew and cast money again to make the same film. Why not? Just to see a different
Or a
version.
limited series could be cool too. And maybe tie in some of the stuff from the graphic novel.
Yeah. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Didn't you say that you hated the fact that they just remade Speak No Evil?
I do. But I'm saying if I'm thinking of a producer to make money, it's not about should be. I didn't say, remember, it's not should it be, it's can it be.
I feel like this movie would do better now.
Yeah.
And it did really well back then. But it feels like, I mean, I think A24 started in 2013, so the year before, but it feels like an A24 movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I feel like
100%.
if it was, it would have gotten a lot more.
Totally.
Or you could even do this as like a mini series. Start with a prequel, like big budget mini series.
Mm-hmm.
Start with the prequel first, and then dive into this. Because something that I did feel was missing a little bit from this, same with Under the Shadow, was that I would have loved to have seen a little bit of exploration into the mythos around what does it mean to be a vampire in this world. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are the rules? What, like, does the sun hurt her? Does she need to eat? Like, how did she become a vampire? If she bites the guy.
I actually like this film better. They didn't do that.
No, me too. I'm just saying if it was to be a reboot, I want to see something different.
Yeah.
If it was a limited series.
So if we're getting a reboot, make it a limited series and dive into that a little bit and start with the prequel.
And you could play with timelines.
HBO limited series.
And throw to flashbacks. And I think it'd be
of
really
her
cool.
being a vampire during the revolution.
Yeah.
79 revolution.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Okay. Final thoughts and grades.
What's your grade, Kabe?
I think my grade hovers between an A- or A. I think I'll give it
So an A- plus.
A-. No, I'll give it an A-. I think it's an A-
Okay.
for being a very inventive, creative, and original take on the vampire lore, for being an Iranian film that's different,
Cool.
and for being within a story with engaging characters.
All good.
Because this is an Iranian cinema podcast, I'm giving this a 19 out of 20. So I think
Nice. Almost beast.
I think that equates to like a 94 out of 100.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So okay, solid. So an A.
I just wanted to tell a little story that my dad told me the other day.
Okay.
I was telling him about the podcast and about the subject matter of the movie, and
Yeah.
it looked like he was reminiscing for a second, and then he told me that when he was a kid, around 8 in the 1960s in Esfahan, he rode his bike through Charbagh and went to a theater to watch Christopher Lee in Dracula.
Yeah.
I think it was Dracula Prince of Darkness based on the timing, but
Mm-hmm. And what happened?
he told me he was so freaked out after seeing the movie that the whole ride home he pedaled extra hard because he felt like he was being stalked by Dracula through Charbagh in Esfahan. That was so interesting to me because before talking to my dad, I'd never even conceptualized Iranians thinking about vampires. Like, never in my understanding of our culture, my understanding.
Yeah.
And granted, I'm from the States here. I was born and raised here.
Yeah.
But I never like thought of that as a thing. But to know that my dad was afraid that a vampire was going to get him in Esfahan in the 1960s.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I don't know. It was refreshing. It made me feel more connected to him.
That's cool.
Nice.
And this movie, I think, is really interesting because
Yeah.
it bridges that gap that I had in my head.
Yeah.
And my dad repeats a lot of the same stories, but this is one I had never heard before, and I had no concept before he told me that about Iranians even knowing anything about vampires. Like, that was never anything. Those two worlds I never connected.
That's funny.
But to know that my dad was pedaling home as fast as he could because he thought that Dracula was lurking around Charbagh waiting to attack him was really interesting to me. And it makes this movie just more special to me, I think, because I haven't really seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
And I wish there was more movies like it because I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I thought it was a delightful film. It was haunting. It was poignant in its messaging. It was beautifully written, directed, acted, and produced. I said this before, but I'm mad at myself for not seeing it earlier because it's a movie that I really enjoyed, and I love movies like this. I really, really enjoyed it. And if anyone's listening to this, I recommend you go watch it.
Question for you: was there a moment in the film where suddenly you were like, "Oh, this is great! Like, what have I been doing?" Was there like a certain, or was this after you finished watching the film and it washed over you, or was there like a singular moment?
I think the sound in the film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
You guys said she obsessed over everything that she put in it, and you can really tell because you could tell what she felt, what sections of the song she put in. Like she really knew the feeling she was trying to convey there.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was incidental. Everything was made with pure love and passion, which is the least you can ask from a director is give a shit.
Yeah. That opening sequence does a really good job at establishing the tone of the film. And it's a tone that is very unique, but it's built using little bits and pieces of things that we find familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a sucker for movies with a interesting world of story and a unique set of rules of engagement built within the environment that the story takes place. And this film, I think, did that. And it made me want to spend more time in this world. It makes me want to read the books. It makes me excited. Hey, if there's ever more for this, let's do a mini series so that we can explore it more. And I think that that's a testament to really loving what was shown and the amount of which it was shown, because it left the people wanting more, you know? Like you said, Seena, the writing, the cinematography, the sound in this film, it was all done so well. And the shot composition, the blocking, it was all done expertly. I'm shocked that it was made for the budget it was made, because
What was the budget?
I mean, we think it was made for under 100,000, right?
According to, I mean, maybe that was just startup money, but yeah, the Indiegogo campaign got like 56,000.
Yeah, it doesn't say, like, we can't find the budget online, but like from all
It was low budget.
indications of what we're able to find, yeah, it's like 100-ish thousand maybe, but it doesn't feel like it. And I think that the movie very smartly shoots and plays within the constraints of its budget. There's a lot of outside scenes using a lot of the same locations, very few actors. And when there are a lot of actors, with the exception of the club scene, there's like, you're only seeing one or two characters on screen talking at a time. And I think it does a really good job of working within those constraints, and it makes a very, very good movie. So my final score for this is an A-, which would make our Cinemarex average score for A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night an A-.
A girl walks home alone at night, a sentence that strikes at you like a double-edged sword. The story is so smart, meticulous, and fresh, it is unquestionably a film that defies genre. A film that punches you like a mosaic of shimmering fragments that do not compose a bigger picture. Ana Lily Amirpour's debut feature brims with stylized qualities that have been prioritized over story and characters. But this film, shot in high-contrast monochrome aesthetic, almost entirely at night, is like an Iranian film noir by way of crime drama with supernatural edges and odes to spaghetti westerns. We owe Ana Lily a debt of gratitude for making a film so brave and bold in the pantheon of Iranian cinema that it not only adds to Iranian cinema's rich history, it elevates it, redefines it, and challenges it. Lovers and detractors of this film alike would surely have to come to the same conclusion. Whatever your thoughts on this film, there's nothing ordinary about it, and in a way, that surely makes it extraordinary. Seena, thank you so much for joining us on this talk about
Thanks
A
for
Girl
having me,
Walks
guys.
Home Alone at Night.
Thank you, Seena.
Now that you're finally awake, we can start the podcast.
Let's do it.
From the top. We'll just take it all again. This was just a
delete
warm-up.
everything from before.
Yeah.
Farhan, thank you for joining me as a guest on the... Farhan, you know how I feel about you. Thank you for joining.
Unfortunately. Thank you, Kaveh.
To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in.
Thank
They
you.
only did Didar.
Also, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and review. Bye.
Bye.
Music for Cinema Rex was written and performed by Sohail Sadinejad.